Well, hello everyone. I have right here. I'm talking about our parents right here. Whenever it comes to you're saying okay about something, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That you go ahead and start a conversation talking about something a lot of times, and it's like if it's going to be about the parents, like you have mommy and daddy right here. They're going to be talking to you about something, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that. A lot of times you get into these conversations a lot of times, and you're going to go ahead and use the word okay in like a no, a way of how do you want to call it, just to like a calming manner, to where that's okay. If you don't know, the answer to that, or it's okay if you don't want to explain about this or something like that. So it sure seems that way that every time you do, so every time you do want to think about anything related to psychology and social working, right? And you're thinking is toward, okay, yeah, that number one, that you want to think about mom and dad right here, both mom and dad, along with the family child right here, and so if everybody can remember that I was actually using this right here for an example for like an advertisement for insurance, like for stimulus, or if it's insurance or something like that. But I'm just going to go ahead and use this right here, like this right here is supposed to be something that talks about discussions for the it's okay, talk about for okay, and so we use that phrase a lot, whenever it comes to trying to gather enough information or trying to get somebody to respond to a question or something like that. Like it's okay if you don't know, or yeah, that's okay. And so it's like if you want to kind of use that like maybe like a slogan, type type way to where that might go, yeah, like a verb or like a just because or something like that. But it seems like that just to be able to keep somebody calm, that you're going to go ahead and say that okay, yeah, well, it's that's okay, that you take your time, getting back, take your time responding and everything. But still, it's like that you go ahead and start to talking to somebody about something, and it's like so like let's just say that at the word okay right here word to mean something such as to word that that whenever it comes to saying okay to somebody about something, what exactly is it that you're saying? And everybody would probably think as to where, well, really that's pretty much meanings as to where take your time responding to the question, or take your time with what we were talking about, and from the conversation. And I include right here, talk about for a gift. It's just another way of making it easier for somebody else. And so, really, what does that mean whenever I say that? Well, meaning is to where a lot of times it's like each time you're going to be get into a conversation with mom and dad, or maybe if it's aunt or uncle or anybody, or maybe even cousin, that you're going to go ahead and say they're going to be talking to you about a lot of things that they don't quite understand for sure. Like everybody else might say that, okay, yeah, mommy and daddy are senior citizens, so they're going to go ahead and tell you that, the things that they don't quite understand about what this says, and like, I don't have my glasses on, so can you read this for me? And so if there's going to be any papers or any of any kind, and like everybody else might say that, a number of times that mommy and daddy have taken care of a lot of things for the child, but then one of these days, whenever the child grows up, and it's like that mommy and daddy are going to ask you to do something for them, and like let's just say that help them understand about how to order something from a catalog, or maybe how to pay a bill with a credit card or something like that. So it sure seems that way that so you have right here for okay right here, and everybody else might say is toward okay, that so if we're talking about if this right here was supposed to be like maybe a catalog or something like that, and people might say is toward, okay, yeah, that if there was maybe a button right here on the left or maybe on the right here to where they say is to where, okay, yeah, that in order for to be able, like, yeah, the okay symbol. And so I know that a lot of times it's like, yeah, whenever you're going to be looking at any paperwork or any mail that you get by mail, or maybe anything else real important, that that there will be like an okay button right here. And everybody else might say that, okay, yeah, the okay button. And really, what's the purpose to why that you would need to have something that says the okay button or something like that, or like, yeah, okay, that it's a way to keep the person calm whenever it comes to taking care of something important, right? So it's like, yeah, before we proceed with the next steps, I just want to let you know that you may not agree with everything that was on this document. Number one, so it's like, yeah, so that's maybe going to be the first thing, like everybody else might say, is to where agree or disagree. And so a lot of times it's like a lot of everybody else would you'll use that word or phrase is to word it yeah that's it's okay, and like yeah, it's okay, take your time a lot of times, and yeah, that's acceptable. And so like our parents would even say too that they would use that right there just to know as to where that if somebody if you were trying your best to answer a question, or if it was related to something about as to where that yeah that while you were working on something important, that you didn't have everything that you would really recommend for them to use or something like that. So yeah, like everybody else might say this to where that about almost every time that somebody's going to be asking a question, that it seems like that there's really you don't really always have a perfect response to how you want to phrase your answer to the questions. And that is why it seems like everybody else might say is to where that whenever you get into these conversations a lot of times, that yeah, that parents are going to say is to where okay, yeah, I ask a simple question. And a lot of times that these conversations, by the way, are going to start out with something like that, a simple question. I asked a simple question, and why can't I get a simple answer for that? And so simple answers are going to be something like, yeah, simple questions. So a simple question is supposed to be something like, shorter than 2 sentences, something like that. A simple yes or a no. So like everybody else might say that you get into these conversations with your parents a lot of times, and yeah, mom and dad are going to probably say that we want the answer that we want is a yes or a no. And like everybody says, to where every time you have these conversations with anybody, really, that they're going to ask you to respond to our question with a simple yes or no. Yeah, yes or no. And yeah, so even if you do respond with a yes or a no, that is it really going to be easy to understand what the conversation? I'm like, yeah, well, why? So it's like, let's just say that if you ask the questions, and then you receive a no for that question there, you receive a no answer for the other question, and they're going to ask you, well, why? Why don't you agree on that? And so a lot of times it's like, yeah, so you get into these conversations with mom and dad both, and everybody might say is toward it, yeah, anything like maybe on text messaging or anything like that, but it's like every time you think about that, and you're warned toward it, that yeah, you go ahead and start the conversation right here. Like this right here will be like maybe for like the subtitle or something like that, to where to please read this part of read this top portion right here on the top right here. So it's like yeah, so this right here was supposed to be something that's supposed to represent to where a conversation, yeah, a meeting conversation. And how do you think that it would need to be, these text and writing would have to be placed? You have right here for okay. A gift is just another way of making it easier for somebody else. And then you go ahead and start out right here with good questions and simple answers. Simple questions, I want a simple question. I'm like, yeah, simple. But anybody might say that, you want to go ahead and change that to, simple questions, simple answers. It would probably make more sense if I did that. So simple answers. And, yeah, it's like simple answers. Yeah, I know it. But anyway, simple answers right there. A simple answer would more likely be a simple yes or no. And so it's like, so every time you have these conversations, a lot of times, that, yeah, demands a simple yes or no, or a higher demand than compared to a simple, okay. And so a lot of times, if you're going to be in an interview, especially that, everybody might do this study right here of the typical psychology, that if you said okay a lot of times, okay could also mean that person, yeah, they can hear you. Okay can also mean as to where that yeah. It could also mean as to where I understand a little bit more now, and so it's like yeah, so every time you think about that, and you're 102, that you would say okay just to be able to keep the situation calm, and a lot of times it's like yeah, keeping the situation calm, and so every time you have these conversations, a lot of times that you're going to go ahead and use, like you talk about the word you for okay right here, and you make that maybe make that a little bit bigger, but still, when we talk about okay right here, and you're warned to where that you start a conversation with somebody, maybe your children, and it's like yeah, a gift, and then I can zoom. I'm like yeah, show everybody here that this right here, a gift is another way of making it easier for somebody else. But yeah, still, it's like so yeah, it's like so every time you think about simple questions, simple answers to a question, right? So more likely the answer that somebody is looking for is something kind of like this right here, to where that nothing longer than 3 sentences right here, to where it would make it easier for the other person to be able to read and understand what okay, yeah, I'm trying to understand. What you just said. I don't get it. And so really, that every time you do have conversations with your parents, a lot of times, that do you think that maybe it would make a lot of sense to have something that represents maybe for the okay moment or something like that, like everybody else might say that you're gonna go ahead and from here, and I can go ahead. I'm like, yeah, you copy, and then, but still, it's like, so every time you think about that, and 102, that okay, yeah, okay, just to be able to go easy on the conversation a lot of times, and it's like everybody else might say is toward, okay, yeah, that, yeah, you go ahead and put okay right here toward any question that you asked from earlier, right? That you, yeah, you did get a response from that from earlier, and okay, yeah. So every time you do think about that, and you're 102, that you go ahead and place an okay like let's just say that if there was maybe three people talking, in a meeting room or something like that, then you have somebody that's going to respond in like a memo saying, okay, if they got the, if they heard you or if they agreed to that decision or anything like that. But I'm just looking at this right here, and if you can see this right here, it looks like a reversed C right here. That's supposed to be a question mark right there. And it's like, yeah, so every time you think about a question mark, it sure seems that way, that whenever you do look at it at a different way, that somebody's going to maybe say is toward it, that right there, that's a question, that's the type of question mark that you don't really see all the time, and like everybody else might say that, question mark right there. And so every time you think, I'm like, yeah, every time you would think about that, for sure, that your 102 is toward it, that, if you're going to see something like a question mark right there, like say, good questions, simple answers, yes or no right there, and you get into these conversations a lot of times, and like your mom and dad both are going to be telling you that, how often do you think that you would want to put a comma or maybe an apostrophe between your sentences or something like that, so that way somebody would be able to read and understand what exactly is it that you're asking, what is it that you're trying to say. So it sure seems like, the compound sentences a lot of times, and it's like, if most of us are real good with our English writing, by the way, that, how would you be able to put a question into a sentence, like everybody else might say that, a gift is just another way of making it easier for someone else. And let's just say that, where do you really see any source of request in there, like a gift? And, it's just another way of making it easier for somebody else. And so it's like, so something like that would be like everybody else would say, is to where that that whenever you're starting a conversation with anybody, that the first thing you said was okay, but then you don't really read this, you don't see this right here until later on. So it's like somebody asks you to explain what this is about or what that's about right there, and then it's like you respond earlier saying okay. I hear you, and but still, it's like, for any sorts of definition for a gift or something like that, but still, it's like you talk to your parents a lot of times, and they're gonna maybe say this toward, okay, that's what we heard was, okay, we did not really hear the word acceptable, or, so it's like, so every time you think about the okay moment right there, and a lot of times it's like, does that mean it's acceptable, or does that mean it's toward it somebody, oh yeah, they hear you, like, and that they hear you, and I can say that too, like I tell everybody too, that, whenever you do have conversations with everybody, and they say is toward it, yeah, or something like that, with exclamation points or something like that, yeah, or something like so each time you have conversations with your parents, a lot of times, that okay, or something like, so every time you have you can change the colors too if you want, but tell everybody that okay, and so every time like any source of logo of some kind, that somebody's going to maybe say, I'm like, why does that look like you're saying a year or something like that, the year or something like that. But anyway, but every time you think about okay, and so it's like, so if we've done the studies right here of the typical psychology and social work, that you're warned to where that you get into conversations with somebody, and a lot of times it's like, okay, that, I think a lot of times, like everybody else might say, I think a lot of it has to do with yeah, they're thinking. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the fact about somebody is thinking, and like yeah, it's all about the typical mind thinking, right? It's about how the brain works, and if you were to actually do the studies about typical psychology, that's pretty much what it means right there. Is that we're still thinking about it. Yeah, I'm still thinking, and yeah, you're thinking about anything else that you want to say, something like that. So it's like, so every time you think about that, and you're 102, is that you get into these conversations a lot of times with mom and dad, and 102s toward it, yeah, back whenever you were just a young child, that there was a lot of things that you didn't quite understand during that time, also. But when we talk about for mom and dad, for parents right here, from both mom and dad both, mom and dad both would even tell you that, I don't, yeah, that, you know, uh, I don't understand. Could you read that to me or something like, yeah, so like mom and dad both, but still, it's like, but I'm like, yeah, you hear about that, talking about the word for because right here, and I heard that like, yeah, people use the word because. Yeah, for because, and something like yeah, something like that. But it's like yeah. So every time because be because or something like that. So you get into these conversations with both mom and dad, and it's like yeah that if you want to put because right underneath the question mark instead of, like yeah, I can go ahead and rearrange that too. But it's like everybody else might say that yeah, put it right there underneath the question mark, and everybody else might say that, yeah, because right underneath the question mark. I'm like, everybody else might say that, if you were to respond, everybody else might say that, Roy, that if we were to actually do the studies about the language right there, and 102, you put a question mark right here, and then it with the word because right here. So it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that in 102, that, if this right here was supposed to be an example right here of a conversation that both parents and child had discussed and all that, and your 102 is toward it, really, that I just want a simple answer for my question. I want a simple yes or no to my question, and so it's like every time you think about that, and your child is maybe going to respond to word it's something like, yeah, they're going to be thinking about what they're trying to say, but then at the same time, that, says toward it, it's okay if you don't know right away. It's okay if you want to think first before you respond or something like that. But every time you think about that at 102, that parents might say that they want you to respond in a way of manner to where it starts out with a gift. They have right here for a gift, right here, a gift, and then a comma, and along with that is just another way I might think of somebody else. Talking about, yeah, someone special or something like that. Someone special, just because, or if you want to include like, yeah, that because, yeah, or just because, and just because why? Yeah, so you start a conversation just like that, right? And like everybody else might say that you start a conversation just like that with your parents or anybody that you're talking to, and they're going to say is to where that conversation took a lot longer than you thought. And like everybody else might say is to where that, yeah, that, why do you think that people do that, by the way? And to me, though, it's like, yeah, they get the idea. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, I get it. I understand now. And so it's like, so every time you think about that, and whenever it comes to an okay matter right here, in your 102 is toward it, yeah, that, your parents, they don't understand. Getting a better understanding. Yeah, they're trying to get a better understanding of the work that you were doing. Number one, so it's like every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, that yeah, that you talk to somebody, but the first thing that you hear is okay, yeah, and then you pause for maybe 5-10 seconds or something like that, and then later on you hear, I'm trying to understand. Well, what is it that you're asking? And so it's like, yeah. So yeah, if you want to kind of call it, maybe the 30-second or maybe the 5-second rule or something like that. But every time, yeah, maybe 10 seconds later, 10 seconds later, you're going to get another response. And so it's like if anybody has done this typical psychology right here, yeah, 10 seconds, yeah, 10 seconds later. So it's like, oh, I know, I'm just, yeah, 10 seconds later. So it's like, yeah, so it's like, so every time you do the studies right here, and every time you think about it, by the way, and people might say is to word, yeah, you start a conversation with somebody for sure. Parents are going to be testing their children. They're going to say that, yeah, okay, yeah, 10 seconds later, you go ahead and start a conversation. Simple, yeah, I'm like, yeah, you ask the questions, 10 seconds later, okay, and then there's a pause. Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. I'm thinking 10 seconds later. I understand. Good question. Okay, yeah, you asked the questions. What's this all about? Someone special just because. Why? 10 seconds later. I understand. So it's like so everybody might say that that every time you think about it, and your 102 is toward it, you go ahead and put all this together in the way you think about it, and it's like, everybody else might say is toward it, the way that was all put together, by the way, in your 102 is to where that, yeah, well, it's not so complicated as what it was from before, so, yeah, if you want to go ahead, and I'm like, but like everybody else might say, is to where that every time you think about that, and you're thinking that, okay, yeah, you want to go ahead and start a conversation with anybody, and the first thing that you're going to be thinking about is that, okay, somebody asked you a question, or that, yeah, okay, let's get started, or something like that, and so yeah, and so every time you think about that, and who knows, who really knows over the fact about, if okay is supposed to be what you call like another way of saying is to where you tell somebody that, okay, let's get started, or something like that, or, like everybody else might say, is towards another way of how you want to call it, is to where that, yeah, just to be able to keep the person calm, if you're going to be in an interview or somewhere like that, and somebody's going to say is to word that, okay. Okay could also mean acceptable. Okay can also mean is to word it take your time. But it's like, but whenever somebody does respond to saying that it's okay, and a lot of times it's like, yeah, it's all about keeping, yeah, keeping the person calm. And so it's like, so every time you do have conversations with somebody, and they might include a word such as, well, or okay, or yeah, or something like that. But whenever we do the studies about typical psychology right here, and you're warned toward it, you know, okay was the first answer that you got there at first, but then you go ahead and include something like gift is just another way of thinking. It is easier for somebody else. Someone special just because. Why? And so it's like, so every time you think about that in 102 is to where that you get into these conversations a lot of times that, yeah, everybody's going to say that, that conversation took a lot longer than I thought. And you want to know too, why do you think both mommy and daddy would ask you to anything that they don't quite understand about what you said from earlier? And you're like, well, why? Well, but still. So really, that why do you think that that parents would have a higher demand for a simple answer to every situation and maybe every scenario whenever it comes to trying to, like everybody say that, you're going to go ahead and ask, like, yeah, sorry I asked, or, like, yeah, I was just asking earlier, I didn't quite know during the time, but it's like, every time you think about that in 102, that really, that, you do start talking to mom and dad both about something, and a lot of times, it's like, yeah, the source of communication, right? But every time you think about that in 102, really, that I can go ahead and include right here. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to, like, yeah, I can make that smaller if I need to, but, so that way we can all see this right here, but, why? A gift is another way of showing the other person a way of feeling and showing that you care. So if I put on there like, yeah, just like that right there, and if I just make that a little bit smaller so we can read that right there. But every time you think about that in 102, that so if you're going to be starting a conversation with anybody in the 102, that they don't really see all that right there. Not at first, like everybody say that if you were to write something like that, then people might 102 that even your mom and dad both are going to maybe say that I'm sorry, but I cannot read that. Well, what does that say? I don't know what it says. I can't read that. The conversation that we had earlier, what you said was that that conversation that we had earlier, you said, okay, I'm still working on it or something like that. Yeah, I can't read that. What does that say right there? So every time you do have these conversations with mom and dad both about anything really, that it's like, why didn't you say something earlier about that? And so it's like, yeah, you go ahead and write small just like that, mainly because that mom and dad, you really need to listen. So it's like, so a lot of times it's like, you may feel like mom and dad, I'm like, like everybody else might say, is to where if you think that anybody's ignoring you, a lot of times everybody else might say that, you would write small, or maybe that you would write, like, you didn't tell somebody right away about something just because, but still, for whoever that's listening, but still, it's like, but that they're not going to understand. If you tell them right away, or that they would not agree. A lot of times, that's usually what I hear too. Is that if you do not agree, to my answer from earlier, if you don't agree to this, understand. Understand, or if you understand, agree, and so if I were to just type that right there, understand, agree. And so yeah, so every time you have these conversations with your children, a lot of times, mom and dad both, and the 102 that you're 102 that you start conversations with somebody, and the first thing you usually hear is something like saying, okay, yeah, or something like that, but you don't really see this part right here. So everybody else might say that, yeah, that's a different answer from what you gave me earlier, but I can't read that right there. So like everybody else might say, yeah, you go ahead and write your response right here, and like everybody else might say, this right here is supposed to be a document, and let's just say if it's maybe on a text message or something like that, you're going to go ahead and write small just like that, just because. For what reason? Like, well, you don't like, I'm like, yeah, like everybody else might say to you write small so that way not everybody can read it, because maybe one of those reasons is because that you want to keep it confidential, so where not everybody can read it right away, but like everybody else might say that, you're not going to understand what that means until that we're able to talk about it. And so it's like, yeah, so every time you do have conversations with your parents, like mom and dad both would say that you go ahead and start a conversation, right? And it's like most of the time that, yeah, that's usually how it goes too. That you want to talk to the person first. You actually prefer to go ahead and just talk to the person first, and then they'll go ahead and read whatever. But still, it's like everybody else might say that you go ahead and have these conversations with mom and dad both, and they're going, what I say is toward it. You asked them a question from earlier, but it's like you 102 that anything that mom and dad that they don't quite understand, or that they didn't take time to listen there first, and so that's why it seems like that you may think is toward that nobody is listening. So since nobody is listening, that's one of the reasons why that you felt more comfortable just writing down your response, just writing it down, and then you would explain later about but still. So it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that in 102, that you have these conversations with somebody, and you're 102 that who is listening, and so it's like, yeah, so every time you have the conversations with somebody, for sure, you have conversations with mom and dad about something, and you're 102 that how can I tell if you're listening or not? Because it takes you maybe an hour to respond to the question that we were talking about from earlier. So it's like, it seems like a lot of times that would everybody maybe would prefer is toward, yeah, that if you're going to have conversations with anybody, that do you think, like everybody else would say, is toward that yeah, for sure, that everybody else would say that having a conversation with anybody, that do you think that it would be best to go ahead and like, yeah, like nowadays they had the text messaging and everything, but it's like every time you do think about that, to like have like a logo right here to where that, yeah, to where if I'm like, I can, yeah, like everybody's, if you want to change the color, you don't really have to, but I'm like, but still, have something, yeah, have like a logo design right here, have something right here to where it makes it more comfortable. Like if you're trying to start a conversation with anybody, for sure that you would do like a little logo design right here that shows something to make somebody feel a little bit more comfortable when you're talking to you about something. Like everybody says to her, yeah, something like a little stamp or a symbol or something like that represents to where it to make the person feel a little bit more comfortable with having that conversation with you. And you want to know too that the first thing that you're going to say is like, and it's okay, and so yeah, that So you're always want to know too that yeah, I'm like I could maybe include like some I'm like yeah, but still anything any examples later on I can maybe show everybody here, but still but you have right here if I talk about for okay right here, but it's like yeah every time you start a conversation for sure that you want to kind of like yeah you want to kind of do like a logo design right here toward anybody who's watching and anybody who's looking and listening that you go ahead and start a conversation with somebody and that the first thing that you're gonna say is toward that yeah it's okay and so yeah you start a conversation with somebody with anybody really and it's like when do you think that you should use the word okay and like what does okay pretty much mean? It's to where you're trying to keep the person calm, so that I'm like yeah keep the person calm so that way you can start a conversation with them and so that's why it seems like everybody else might say is toward it yeah keep the person calm, but it's like but on the hand, I'm like, yeah, make that just a little bit bigger so that way your viewers can see it right here. And so it's like, yeah, so it's like, so every time you think about that and you're warned toward it, that, yeah, any conversation that you have with anybody for sure, that, you're warned to where that, try to make it a little bit more simple and, simple yes or no answer, and then also I'm like yeah talk about for the question mark right there. But what is a good example of a good question? And like everybody says is to where it's basically another way of saying is to where that nobody has ever asked me that before or something like that. Nobody has asked me before or nobody has really taken the time to talk to me about that. And so a lot of times it's like you get into these conversations with mom and dad, and the first thing that you're going to be hearing most of the time is that, yeah, that, how do you go ahead and how do you put a question into a sentence, knowing about it as to where you go ahead and start reading somebody a sentence, right? You start reading somebody a quote or maybe any source of action verb, and you're going to include something like, a gift. It's just another way of making it easier, yeah, more comfortable for somebody else to understand or something like that, or like but it's like, yeah, you start reading something to somebody for sure, and somebody's going to ask the question. So is that really going to engage your mind, like everybody else is saying, is to where, yeah, you're thinking, but while somebody is going to be reading, while you're going to be reading something to somebody for sure, that your audience is going to be thinking, and yeah, that they're going to go ahead and think of, okay, yeah, I got a question, and yeah, hey, I got a question for you. Yeah, I got another question for you. So it's like, so every time you think about that, every time you, every time you have these conversations with both mom and dad, for sure, like everybody else will say, yeah, mom and dad both are going to maybe say is toward it, yeah, that it happens all the time, right? You start reading the first or second sentences of a paragraph, right? You're trying to tell somebody a story, but at the same time, somebody in that audience is going to have a question for you. What does that usually mean? What does that really engage your mind into thinking? As to where, yeah, they feel more comfortable talking. And so every time you do think about that, then 102 is to where that just don't be don't be surprised or discouraged about the fact that if you do when you're working on something and maybe if you're reading something that don't be discouraged over the fact that that if somebody does, they feel more comfortable joining the conversation, they feel more comfortable talking about something whenever they have the basic idea, whenever they're thinking about something and they feel more comfortable joining that conversation, they feel okay joining that conversation just because that, whenever they first join the conversation for sure, they're not going to have any idea of what you're talking about, or maybe what they want to say, what this person wants to say, until that they have a better understanding of what all that means right there. So it's like so every time you have these meetings right here at 102 is to where that yeah, number one, that if your dad was the host, or maybe if your mom and dad both were, one of them was the presenter and the other one was the host, and you were the guest. Yeah, you were the guest in this meeting right here. So every time you think about that 102, that yeah, you're the guest, I'm the host. Let me speak. And so every time you think about that in 102, that yeah. So it's like anything that mommy and daddy that didn't understand from earlier, right? In year 102, that yeah, that for sure, daddy is going to ask as to where you signed in as guest, but I would like to. I would like to go ahead and host this meeting. So it's like, yeah, so daddy asked you to go ahead and sign him in as guest. But then mommy, of course, mommy is, mommy's the presenter. And mom and dad right here is like, if everybody all can see that right there. Yeah, mommy's the presenter. And yeah, the presenter. And yeah, like everybody say, like, yeah, I'm trying to spell it, but anyway, but it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that in 102, that, you have these conversations with both mom and dad, and let's just say if it's going to be on Microsoft Teams, or if it's maybe going to be on a Zoom call or somewhere like that, and you're 102, that you're signed in as guest, or you're the presenter and daddy's the guest right here. But then it's like, you can switch it around for sure, but like everybody else might say that yeah, you get in these conversations, and the first thing that you're going to say is okay, thinking, yeah, but then yeah, 15 minutes later, you're going to get that to where that somebody made a request. For a request or a demand and a request right here. So a lot of times that's usually what happens too. That demands and request. Yeah, higher demands and request. So every time you think about that in your 102, that why don't you just listen, and let me speak. And so it's like, yeah, so like everybody else may say, if that's really, like mom and dad both may say that that's kind of like a force of that's kind of like a habit, by the way, that I don't mean to be, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like, yeah, like everybody else might say, I see mom and dad doing that. And anybody who's going to be a senior citizen, by the way, I see mom and dad doing that a lot of times. And you might say is toward that there is no rules whenever it comes to our senior citizens, right? There are no rules whenever it comes to our senior citizens, but just knowing that whenever senior citizens have a better understanding of anything that they asked from earlier, for sure, that they're going to say is toward, okay, yeah, that so anything that you want to teach mom and dad, for sure, anything that you want to go and teach mom and dad, and you 102 is toward, okay, yeah, the first thing that you said whenever you started that conversation was, okay, yeah, I'm still thinking about it. But then, like, right down here, it was like, oh no, there's a lot more information that's provided right down here. So it's like, so every time you think about that, then people may want to know too, is that why do you think that maybe doing a logo design would be important and necessary? And like everybody else might say that you do like maybe a symbol design or something like that. What's the reason why you would do any sort of design based on what you were working on right here? So that way somebody else can be able to understand it, right? And so like everybody else might say is toward that the reason why you did this design right here is to help this other person, is to explain, to help them understand what is it that you were talking about from earlier, what is it that you were discussing from earlier. So that's why it's like, yeah, you go and tie in a lot of this information right here, but it's like, yeah, so you would use the okay symbol right here just because of the fact that, just to be able to keep the reader calm. Like, okay, yeah, just stay calm, okay? Okay, yeah. Okay, everybody, is everybody listening? Okay. This seems like a lot of information right here, but just take it one thing at a time. Just take it one thing at a time. And that's usually how, like a lot of those, hosts and presenters would say that, if there's a lot of information right there that you just cannot memorize there first, but still, that there's going to be slides and everything. There's going to be, presenter boards and slides, and so that's why it seems like that, everybody else would say is to where if you're going to be starting a conversation with mom and dad, for sure, that the first thing that you hear is okay, and so it's like, yeah, just take it one thing at a time, but it's like every time you do, get into these conversations a lot of times, and it's like the first thing that you think about is that, the first thing that you hear about is a simple answers a lot of times, and a simple yes or no, and so it's like, yeah, so every time you do think about that, like mom and dad might even say that, you started a conversation with mom and dad, and a 102, yeah, yes or no, right there. And so, yeah, you do start a conversation. If you have a family conversation sometime, and 102, yes or no, and, but still, a lot of times if you get a no to a few of those answers, to a few of those questions, and you're warned to where that, I'm sorry, but I still don't understand, why you, I'm like, yeah, I still don't understand. Well, why not? And so it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that, and you're 102 that, yeah, I don't understand. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to understand. Yeah, I don't understand. Or no, I don't agree to that. And so every time you have these conversations with anybody, that it's like, first of all, if you cannot get somebody to agree on something for sure, that you might go ahead and just write your response a little bit smaller just because. Yeah, well, I didn't think that you were going to agree with what my response was from earlier, so that's why I responded, wrote it a little bit smaller. But like everybody else might say, is to where really, how are you going to resolve anything if you don't, if you're going to go ahead and respond to that to where that not everybody's going to see it, and not everybody's really going to understand what you were saying from earlier, and maybe that's another reason why, like everybody else might say, that anything about misunderstanding, that that is why it seems like that the 10-second rules right here, like people might say that a lot of these rules that would apply, at some point, just because. But like everybody else might say that. You would really only want to apply that, like everybody say, if there's too much information that's provided all at once for sure, that there would probably be a lot of rules and requirements. I'm like, yeah, a lot of rules that would apply, there at first, just because there's a lot of information that's there that's still being reviewed. Please let that person look over that information. Look over and review that information. And just determine, and so it's like, yeah, review. So every time you have these meetings, by the way, if it's filling out an application or anything else that's real important, it's like, yeah, so it's like every time you think about that, and like, what exactly is it that mom and dad are thinking about? And but it's like you have these conversations with mom and dad, and it seems like that there's a lot of information right there that they don't quite understand. And so, yeah, mom and dad, they're going to go and ask the son, the son and daughter, to go ahead, help them understand this. And that is why it seems like that, you want to go ahead and respond to word okay, yeah, I understand, or yeah, okay, I got I got your message from earlier, so yeah. So you want to go ahead and say okay just to keep the person calm, right? And so if you want to use it like maybe for like the headlines right here, okay, and so if you were to start a meeting with something like that right there, to where you have it highlighted, to where they kind of try to keep everybody calm, and yeah, that seems like a lot of information right there to be able to read about and understand and all that. But if we've done the psychology right here, this typical study of the brain in psychology, though, you use the word okay just to be able to keep everybody calm, and so that way you can explain to somebody, anybody who's trying to understand what you were working with and anything that you were trying to put together, right? And so it seems like that, yeah, why not do like a logo design to where that you go ahead and use a stamp design right here to where you go and place that onto a document to help mommy and daddy better understand what you were talking about from earlier. Something to where that they can recognize anything that they're familiar with, that they can understand. And so that's why it seems like everybody else might say that, simple questions, like everybody say that, yeah, good questions are going to involve a simple answer. And for sure, it's going to include a yes or no. But like everybody else might say, is to where that, but how often is it really going to be, is to where it's going to include an okay. So really, it's like every time you put that into a scenario, and you're always 102, is to where, okay, I understand now, but before I didn't quite get it at first, but yeah, I understand now, what you were talking about. And so it's like, so every time you have these conversations with both mom and dad at first, that it seems like that toward yeah, that everybody was yelling, and everybody was mad at first. Everybody was frustrated at first about what was going on. But it's like, it seems like a lot of times, like everybody says, to where you go ahead and have these conversations with both mom and dad at first, and you're warned toward it. Why is it that everybody's always fighting all the time, and everybody's yelling all the time about something? And that's why it seems like that, to where that, why do you think that maybe anybody, any scientist or any psychology and social work would say is to where that, why don't you, like, yeah, you go ahead and start the conversation by keeping the situation calm, like doing a design to where you tell everybody that, okay, keep everybody calm, okay? And so it's like, so every time you think about that, and you're warned to where that maybe someday at some point, there's going to be maybe a symbol or like a little logo design, that's going to represent to where they're trying to keep everybody calm. What are you going to tell mom and dad both about that? Something to where that they can easily understand, or if anything that they may not even understand, but just knowing that anything important from earlier, that yeah, it's okay, it's already been taken care of, and you're trying to get the situation taken care of. And so every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, is toward why do you think that it would maybe make more sense to go ahead and do a logo design right here, maybe on the very top right here, and you display this like if it's supposed to be like a poster display right here. And everybody might say is to where display that to where everybody can, everybody can take the time to go ahead and read the details about that. And like everybody else might say is to where, yeah, for sure, a graphic designer for sure would go ahead and do something like that, to where they go ahead and put something like that together right there, and you're like, yeah. And then to take your time to go ahead and read over all this right here. And 102 is to where you go ahead and start out is to where yeah, it's okay. And so every time you do think about that, by the way, and your parents are going to say is to where that anything that they're trying to understand about what you were doing from earlier. And so that's why it seems like that every time you do think about that, and you're warned to where that when do you think it's okay, and like everybody may say, is toward any questions that you asked from earlier, when do you think it's okay to ask the questions? And it's like, well, really, that for any reason, just because, really, what simple way is there really, really to ask? Is no one advises toward anybody, anybody who's curious, no, but still, it's like, if you were to actually be looking at that person in the eye and in 102, a lot of times the conversations start that way too. Look at that, look at your parents in the eye, and you're going to say is toward it, yeah, I'm like, yeah, give him a hug. You give him a hug and a handshake, give him a hug, and you're going to maybe say that, yeah, it's okay, and yeah, give him a hug, and give him a hug, and like everybody else might say that usually helps too. Yeah, giving somebody a hug. You give him a hug and a kiss. Yeah, hugs and kisses. Yeah, and people might say that. Yeah, well, really, that hugs and kisses. Yeah, you may not even know the person very well, but like everybody else might say that. Whenever you do start a conversation or interview with somebody, by the way. How often, yeah, they're going to maybe ask that question next as to how often is a hug and a kiss more relevant to do whenever it comes to understanding about how somebody feels, whenever it comes to, anything that you were mad about from earlier, anything about a conversation from earlier, that hugs and kisses, you don't really, you don't really know the person very well, but like everybody else might say that, why do you think that you would want to start the conversation that way? Why can't you start the conversation by saying that it's okay? Talk about for okay. And, yeah, that's okay. Okay. You can start the conversation by saying, okay, rather than, to where, yeah, you don't know the situation very well. Okay, yeah, hugs and kisses. And, so you may not know this person very well, but still, don't you think that it would make more sense to go ahead and start the conversation with, okay, let me see what I can do for you, or something like that. And knowing that you care, the gift of kindness, right? And so every time you think about that, and you're always 102, that you start out with the conversation towards stating, okay, let me see what I can do, or something like that. So do you think that it would make more sense to go ahead and do a logo design to where you would have it toward, a logo design toward it's readable, right? Something that's more readable, and then toward it somebody is able to understand anything that you were talking about. And so that's why it seems like that, whenever you do think about that, and like I say, what exactly is it that your parents are thinking about? Like talk about for okay, you're thinking, yeah, and so like talk about, say, for understanding about the words for okay, right? But anyway, but the way I think about though is like, yeah, the 10-second rules right here, but it's like, yeah, really, for any rules and all, but still. So every time you think about that in 102 is toward it, really, what exactly is mom and dad really thinking about? Is toward it, yeah, just be proud that you tried, right? And people might say, yeah, talk about for proud right here, proud, and so anybody, any social work, proud, and any social worker might even 102 that, talk about for proud right here, proud. And so every time you think about that, and you're always 102 that, proud that you tried, or yeah, I'm proud that, you're proud that you tried, and so yeah, different ways, but still, it's like, so every time you think about that, and 102 that, you use proud, but really, how often are we going to use the word proud and compared to, yeah, it's okay. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.